Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Basketball Conference, the ACC football podcast. My name is Joey Weaver. He's Mike McDaniel. Mike, first question, are you ready for coach hiring and firing season?
I am. It's here, Joey, and we got the first one already on lock.
We did. We didn't have to wait till Christmas or the holidays or nothing. We got this thing started early. First of all, we're going to recap these Week 11 games here, and it seems like the place we should probably start was on Friday night. And as we are kind of referring to here, number 19, Syracuse 54, Louisville 21. This game was not competitive really in any way, shape, or form after like the middle of the first quarter. Obviously, the big storyline here is that on Sunday we found out Bobby Petrino has been officially relieved of his duties as Louisville's head coach. $14 million later, he is being bought out. Also of note in that whole thing is that not only is Petrino fired, but his son and his son-in-law, who are also on the staff, were also fired. The AD just taking care of cleaning house of anyone associated with the Petrino family. And it seems like Syracuse is the ones that get the last laugh. They've gotten drubbed by Louisville the last 4 years, and they just they saw an opportunity to get some revenge here, and they took it, and it ultimately cost Bobby Petrino his job.
Yeah, Louisville's really bad at football still.
Yeah, they haven't been good.
No, another week, another blowout, and this one was a little bit better than the Clemson blowout from a week and a half ago. A little bit better. Not much better, though. And what cracked me up was in the press conference how Bobby Petrino, talked about how he liked how the kids responded, right? They responded well, he thought, after getting drubbed by Clemson. Yeah, I thought so, too. They responded well. They gave up 54 points.
There were still 11 players on the field on most plays.
Right, so, which is good. That's better than they did last week, right? So
seems that way.
Yeah. Well, they didn't give up 77, so they didn't allow their opponent to cover the spread, like in the second quarter or hit the over by 2 touchdowns by themselves or something like that. So that's an accomplishment. And like you said, true family affair. They all got fired together, which is nice. One guy who didn't get fired, who's still on the staff, Joey.
Our boy.
Ironically, our boy Brian Van Gorder.
Although, interestingly enough, not the interim head coach.
That would have been a lot of fun, though.
Oh, yes.
That would have been a lot of fun. You and I would have had a field day with that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll have to settle for Lorenzo Ward here, who was on the staff. And, I mean, look, so first of all, let's say this about Syracuse. Syracuse played a really good game here. They ran for a measly 326 yards on the ground on 55 carries, 5 touchdowns. There were some very clear moments that Louisville just didn't care. I saw a graphic today of an extra point by Syracuse where one of Louisville's defensive linemen didn't even lean on the Syracuse blocker. He just sort of leaned up and stood up, and I mean, it was embarrassing. Louisville, a team that very clearly had quit over the last several weeks, just no effort in a lot of cases, and just seemed like it was very quickly becoming like a bit of maybe a toxic locker room kind of thing. All sorts of chatter about all sorts of players trying to transfer. You've already had your third-string quarterback announce a transfer. There was more news about 20-plus players requesting transfer forms, at least to get that paperwork process started. I mean, the whole thing was an absolute tire fire. $1 million it takes to buy out Bobby Petrino and his staff. And the question now becomes who they go and get. A lot of obvious speculation, and what we've talked about on this program is Jeff Brom. And there's been some questions on here as we record Monday evening that he's been asked directly in press conferences, and he's not giving anyone a straight answer. And why would he? He's still got multiple games on the slate as Purdue's head coach, and they're looking to be bowl eligible and this kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, it is what it is. Louisville this season goes down as an infamous one, and they're going to be moving on from Petrino. And it kind of stands to be seen if they can afford Jeff Brom and his staff and what they're going to try to bring in, or if Jeff Brom wants to be a part of this program, if this is the right time and avenue for him. And if it is, this will probably end up working out for him. But if not, I don't really know where Louisville goes from here, to be quite honest. I don't know a lot of guys that are looking to jump into this situation at this point.
It's Jeff Brom or bust for Louisville, and I think Jeff Brom is the right guy for the job. I do. First of all, he's done a nice job at Purdue. Second of all, he's obviously played at Louisville. We talked to Ethan Moore about this in the preseason, kind of tongue in cheek, like, okay, well, say this season goes to shit. And we kind of joked about it at the time, but hey, what do you know? This season is actually worse than I think any of us predicted. Now, granted, Ethan Moore thought they'd get to bowl eligibility. You and I were talked into saying, okay, well, maybe they'll win 5 or 6 games. Joe, you were the closest one, though. You said, I don't see how they make a bowl game. And you said that throughout the offseason. I don't know if you thought it would be quite as bad as it is right now. I'm not sure anybody thought that, and you're shaking your head no.
Not even close. No.
not even close. This is about as bad as it gets, and I do think that Jeff Brom will ultimately be hired as Louisville's head coach. I think it makes way too much sense for him to end up being the head coach. I mean, I don't see any other real scenario playing out. But let's say that he decides that, you know what, I'm going to stay at Purdue. I don't want to go into that tire fire, as we've called it. I don't know where they go from here. Is it going to be a young coordinator who's just trying to get his first Power 5 job? Like, who is it going to be? I don't see an established head coach at another major program or even a group of 5 school saying, you know what, let's go to Louisville. Let's become the next Louisville head coach. Let's bring the entire staff there and try to figure things out. In one of the toughest divisions in college football most years, I don't see that happening. It'll be really interesting to see where they go from here, especially if they're unable to get Jeff Brom. But all signs certainly point that direction, at least at the outset here, and we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and one of the things I was thinking about though today, Mike, is and for those who listen to podcast Ain't Played Nobody, you're familiar with the concept of Saban or. The thought that I had today, and I'll give you the kind of the real meaning behind it in a second, but the kind of concept of, you know, Saban national titles he has left. How many more national titles is Saban going to win before he retires? A, versus B. How many years it would take Nick Saban to take this Louisville program to a college football playoff berth. And the reason I say that, not because there is any chance in hell that Louisville is going to go to go hire Nick Saban and go to the playoffs or anything like that, but more, I guess, to entertain the idea of how far is Louisville away from being, once again, a pretty competitive and dangerous program. And my argument would be, honestly, not that far. They've got, some decent amount of talent on the roster already. We would probably agree that they're probably average talent-wise in the ACC. And not to mention that Louisville and all that they've built up over the last 10 to 15 to 20 years as an athletic department, they've got a lot of resources and infrastructure and all that in place to where I don't think it's going to be that hard to sell that to an incoming coach and say, here's a lot of stuff you can build around and you can pretty quickly put together a really competitive program. That's kind of the idea in my mind, is that I don't think they're that far. I just think that maybe Bobby Petrino and his staff got a little bit caught, napping at the wheel. Maybe didn't do the best recruiting the last couple of years, and then kind of this toxic culture took over, and the whole thing fell apart, immediately. I think you get the right coaching staff in there, give it 2 or 3 years, and who knows? Maybe you're talking about at least competing for the division title. I don't think this is a massive rebuild, burn it all down, restart effort. I think there's quite a bit already in place you can already build off of.
Obviously 2 years ago, they were like 2 plays away, a yard and a half away from beating Clemson. Clemson won the national championship, right? Last year, I'd argue that their team was not very good, and a lot of the ills with the roster were covered up by Lamar Jackson. This year, they do have talent. They have a lot of young guys on the roster who are trying to find their footing. It's the same sort of situation as last year. A lot of the young guys are still young and they're still trying to figure things out. But now you don't have Lamar Jackson, who probably didn't get as much credit as he deserved, albeit he won the Heisman Trophy a couple years back, but he could have easily won the thing again last year when push comes to shove. Of course, Baker Mayfield was more than deserving. Point being that you remove a historic player, a generational type talent at quarterback, and a guy who's hiding a lot of the problems with your program. And you now enter in a guy in Jawan Pass who, while talented, 4-star talent out of high school, the kid has talent, was not nearly as ready as a lot of people thought that he was. So what do you end up with? You end up with Louisville quarterbacks being shuffled in and out throughout the year. You have a defense that hasn't performed nearly enough to nearly up to par as a lot of people expected them to, and you have a coaching staff also that certainly has not gotten the guys as ready as they probably should have. So all of those combined lead to a down year. And not only has it been a down year for Louisville, it's been a worse year than a lot of people expected it to be. Petrino gets fired. They need a new change of pace with the coaching staff. And I do think if Jeff Brom ends up being the guy, I do think that he'll be able to, at the very least, unite the fan base. And I think that's going to be a very important thing, at least at the outset, when looking at a new head coach. They need to have somebody who's going to unite the fan base, get this thing going back in the right direction, because not only have the players quit on the program, but the fans have quit on it too. And when the fans quit on it, the boosters quit on it, you have money going out the door, and it's no longer beneficial to anybody, and you have a situation that might be even worse on the surface than it appears.
Yeah, definitely not a great situation here for Louisville. If they can get Jeff Brom, I mean, like we've said, maybe it is a quick turnaround. If not, who knows how far down your list you got to go before you can entice someone. We'll have to see. One more thing I wanted to bring up with this game, Mike. About 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Do you know what happened in this game?
What happened, Joey?
This game got pushed from ESPN2 to ESPN News.
What?
They were starting up the Fresno State Boise State game, and that was a bigger deal at that point than watching Syracuse kick the crap out of Louisville. So go ACC to that. But to wrap this up, Syracuse 54, Louisville 21. Bobby Petrino fired. We'll see where the Cardinals go from here. Hopefully they get it right, because if not, this thing could spiral out of control for several years. If not,
it's gonna be bad, Joey.
Hopefully not. Let's move on, Mike. Number 2, Clemson 27. Number 22, Boston College 7. We got our second push of the year, for what that's worth. We both had Clemson minus 20. That's exactly what they won by, so we get our money back on that. So that's fun. Other than that, Mike, Boston College had a lead for a minute in this game, believe it or not.
Shout out punt return.
Yeah, that was good. Boston College scores 7 points, and it happens on a punt return by a dude wearing a hoodie under his pads. Yeah, this game was kind of built up by College Game Day and such to be a really competitive, dangerous game for Clemson. It was cold and windy, and that's why Desmond Howard thought that this was going to be a win for Boston College. People picking the Eagles to win and all this stuff, and they come out and they just get absolutely friggin' flattened by Clemson here. Anthony Brown goes out early in the game with an injury, and it was all downhill from there. The Eagles had no answer for Clemson's defense, and the Tigers wrap up the Atlantic Division and appear poised to probably just go back to the college football playoff for the 4th straight year here, Mike.
Yeah, I was listening to Solid Verbal's recap. They called it kind of a clunker for Clemson. I really couldn't disagree with that more. I get that the offense had some trouble scoring there for a little bit against a pretty good Boston College defense, but Boston College had no prayer in this football game. Congratulations on taking the lead off of a punt return from a guy in the hoodie. Go ACC to that. But outside of that, Boston College's offense for a while in this game, the question wasn't whether or not they could score. It was whether or not they would even get to 100 yards. And A.J. Dillon couldn't eclipse the 40-yard mark. As a team, they had 113 total yards of offense. Anthony Brown left early. I personally don't think it matters who played quarterback in this game. I don't think they were moving the ball on Clemson. Joey, Clemson's first-string defense has not allowed a touchdown since September.
Holy cow.
So how do you like that stat?
It's impressive. Some of me wonders how much that's Clemson being really good versus other teams being not that good. But, I mean, either way, that's impressive.
Yeah, so it's probably a combination of both, somewhere in the middle. The ACC is not very good this year, so that's a major part of it. One team that was, of course, able to score on Clemson was Texas A&M. I wonder if it was back to that game that we have to find a touchdown scored on this first string defense. But anyway, Clemson's front seven, as advertised, really good. Boston College couldn't move the ball in this game at all. Clemson's offense had trouble scoring at times, but then they kind of figured it out and grinded it out, and they won by 3 touchdowns on the road in a relatively tough environment in Chestnut Hill.
I mean, here's the thing: is Clemson had 424 yards of offense and came in just short of 6 yards per play. So if that's a clunker and struggling to move the ball, man, I can't wait to see what you're doing on just like average output. You know, I mean, yeah, this is a game that it never felt like it was really in jeopardy. Yes, Boston College goes up 7-3 early on Clemson, but like you said, Mike, I mean, this almost became more like a question of could Boston College get to 100 yards than could they actually pose a threat, you know, by, again, late in the first quarter. Boston College ends the game 3 of 16 on third down.
Whoops.
Like, yeah, like I mean, that's not going to win you any game ever. And like we said, I mean, they were doing it without Anthony Brown, and that never helps to have to replace your starting quarterback. But I'm not sure that even with him, anything was really going to work. I mean, Brown and his 3 passing attempts, he completed 2 of them for 6 yards. Like, I mean, even when he was in the game, it's not like they were going to be moving the ball a whole lot better than they did the rest of the game, you know. So, yeah, I mean, another dominant effort from Clemson. They look poised to go back to the college football playoff. You mentioned how just absurdly dominant the defense has been. I believe Georgia Tech and Syracuse both scored on this first string defense, but yeah, Syracuse was September 30th, so it's been literally like a month and a half since they've given up a touchdown on the first string defense, which is bizarre. Clemson just on another level from the entire rest of the conference right now. I think it's fair to say.
It's them and everybody else, and I'd argue it's them and like 50 layers of crap, and then everybody else. I mean, it's really not even close. And Boston College might be the second best team in the ACC. We've been playing this game the last couple of weeks on the podcast. We're trying to figure out who's the second best team in the conference. Maybe it's Syracuse, maybe it's BC. I don't know. Regardless, if Clemson played Syracuse now, and granted Syracuse has played well the last few weeks, if they played Syracuse now, I don't think it's as close as it was on September 30th in Death Valley. I think Clemson's offense is too good, and I think Clemson's defense is also too good. It's Clemson, everybody else, and I think it's pretty clearly the case at this point.
Clemson's defense, by the way, has given up 43 points in their last 5 games combined. They're averaging not quite 9 points per game allowed. That is salty, Mike. That's salty.
Seems good.
And the highest point total of any opponent they played that time, that would be my Louisville Cardinals. They scored 16 points on them, mostly in garbage time. But, yeah, that's kind of where we're at with Clemson right now. So I think we've said all we need to say about that. Hopefully Anthony Brown is okay. I haven't heard anything yet. Mike, have you heard anything on his status?
Have not. But, again, we're recording this Monday night, a little bit early in the week. And Steve Adazio is known for not telling us anything really about injuries. So.
Seeing a report here with a quick Google that he is looking like he's day-to-day with an abdominal injury. I'm not sure what kind of abdominal injuries make you day-to-day. Usually they're a lot more severe than that, I would imagine. But what do I know? I'm not a doctor. Clemson 27, Boston College 7. Let's move on, Mike. Wake Forest 27, number 21, NC State 23. How in the blue hell did NC State find a way to lose this game? This feels like a game that the Wolfpack just took way too casually, and they just felt like they were never really being threatened. And next thing you know, they're giving up the game-winning touchdown to the Deeks late. I mean, this is a game that, by all means, they had in hand and they should have won, and they kind of snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
It seems like Wake Forest is still playing hard for Dave Clawson. Like we've said for multiple weeks, it's like, well, they're not as talented as they have been, and they seem like they're pretty young, but hey, they're playing hard.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, oh boy, they are 1 win away from bowl eligibility, Joey.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yeah, so NC State, the biggest thing that happened in this game was that they, for the life of them, could not finish drives. I mean, they were continually kicking field goals, and late in the game, they had 2 turnovers on downs in spots where they could have scored to ice the game, basically. They had a turnover on downs with about 9 minutes left at the Wake Forest 39-yard line, just kind of on the edge of field goal range. Wake Forest comes back and scores a touchdown to make it a 3-point game. And from there, NC State goes 10 plays, 54 yards, turns it over on downs again, this time at the Wake Forest 20-yard line. With just a 3-point lead, they elected not to kick the field goal and instead decided to try to score a touchdown. Probably ended up being an important thing because Wake comes back and scores a touchdown with about 30 seconds left. And NC State, if they had kicked a field goal and it's only a 1-point game, you can probably work yourself back into field goal range and maybe get a shot to win. But instead, they settle for a Hail Mary at the end that's intercepted, and Wake Forest kind of steals this one in Raleigh. NC State led the entire game up until that point, and it just, this is a disappointing loss if you're Dave Doran and NC State. If I'm a fan, I am really questioning some of the coaching and the tactics that went into this one.
I would agree with that. And just when we thought NC State was going to go to a New Year's 6, whoops.
Oops. Yeah, we got all excited and giddy and talking about that and how it was just going to happen. And all of a sudden, now you're 6-3. And, I mean, man, NC State, man, you kind of crapped the bed on this one.
And they could definitely still get to 9-3. But, I mean, how empty is that 9-3 now? Is it more or less empty than that 10-2 that would have taken you to a New Year's 6 to get shellacked by Fresno?
Yeah.
UCF.
Yeah. Not great. Mike, two things we need to bring up. First of all, Wake Forest comes out in this game with their backup quarterback, Sam Hartman, out for the year. So Jamie Newman, the sophomore here out of Graham, North Carolina, comes in. He goes 22 of 33 for 3 touchdowns, no picks, almost 300 yards through the air. He was awesome.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's real good. He made some really good throws. It almost makes you wonder what they were doing with Sam Hartman all year, because I don't know that Sam Hartman would have looked this good.
Right.
Jamie Newman looked great in this game. The Wake Forest defense also looked pretty good. They held their own against what's typically been a pretty good NC State offense, in particular their rushing attack. NC State gets held to 47 yards on the ground on 27 carries. Wake Forest really showed up. But Mike, the most important thing I have about this game is I don't have any cool sound effects or anything, but we have a new segment here on the show. Mike, it's called the Dortch Report. We got to talk about Greg Dortch and what he did in this game, because as I've said before, we don't talk enough about Greg Dortch.
Correct.
So Greg Dortch comes out of this game with 6 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. He, again, is just slippery as all get out and hard to take down. 5 kick returns for 39 yards as well, 4 punt returns for a total of -1 yard. But don't let that fool you. Greg Dortch, really, really good. We look forward to bringing you another edition of the Dortch Report after next week's Wake Forest game.
In related news, he was somehow omitted from the semifinal list for the Blitnikoff Award going to the nation's best wide receiver. And I'm trying to figure out how that happened.
That's a crime.
That is a crime. I don't know how he was omitted from that list. He is one of the best receivers in the conference, which at this point I understand is not saying much, but he is really good. And he was omitted from the list, and a lot of Wake fans are pretty pissed, and rightfully so.
They should be. By the way, Sage Surratt also had a huge game for Wake Forest on the edge. 8 catches for 109 yards. He was all over the place on the end of Jamie Newman passes. So
name that Surratt.
Yeah, that Carolina Surratt. That's right. So really good win for Wake Forest. And don't look now, but they might be able to backdoor their way into bowl eligibility here. We thought that was dead and gone kind of dream here, but now they're games against Pittsburgh at home and Duke on the road. That Duke game fixes to be very, very interesting. Duke's already bowl eligible, which is fine, but they've got Clemson next week. So depending on how they are coming out of that, Wake Forest has 2 chances here to get bowl eligible, which should be very, very interesting. So go get it, Demon Deacons.
Joey, before we move on, we might be living in a world here in the next couple of weeks where Virginia, Syracuse, and Wake Forest are all bowl eligible. Meanwhile, Florida State and Virginia Tech might not be. How about that?
Man. And 2018 just continues to get weirder. I feel like I say that every week, but it only ever stays true. Wow, that's a thought.
By the way, is Miami making a bowl game?
They might be. We'll get there here in just a second. Yeah, let's move on here. Wake Forest 27, NC State 23. Moving on, number 4, Notre Dame 42, Florida State 13. This is another one from the Department of Games that just we kind of built up because we needed to build something up this week, but ended up just not really ever being that close. We ended up getting a little cameo appearance from Brandon Wimbush in this game for Notre Dame. Ian Book was announced out after the podcast was released for the preview, and that really had me questioning my Notre Dame -17 pick. But Brandon Wimbush comes in, not particularly great passing the ball, but that didn't stop Notre Dame from moving it. They had 365 yards on the ground on 50 tries against what I thought was going to be a pretty formidable Florida State defense, but it was not on this night. Florida State did not want any part of the cold up there in South Bend, and Notre Dame rolls.
Florida State's defense looks pretty good against ACC teams. Update: the ACC is really bad, and Notre Dame is really not bad. And Dexter Williams, Notre Dame's running back, 202 yards on the ground on senior day, set a career high. So thanks for playing, Florida State. Don't have a whole lot to say about this other than it was an absolute blowout from start to finish. Deandre Francois throws an interception on the first possession of the game. Notre Dame scores 2 plays later. Brandon Wimbush throws a touchdown pass. He had 3 touchdown passes in the game, and Dexter Williams ran all over the Florida State defense. And it was one of the few bets on the weekend that I lost, Joey. I bet 2 games on Friday night, one of which was Syracuse to beat Louisville by whatever the spread was, a lot. I think it was 17. Mm-hmm. They covered. Awesome. And then I picked Fresno State on Friday night. That didn't go quite as swimmingly as they got upset by Boise, which is what it is. Mm-hmm. And then the only other game that I lost this weekend on the betting circuit was Notre Dame, Florida State under 49, which Notre Dame scored 42 by themselves. So that was that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Notre Dame led this game, by the way, 32-6 at halftime. And if you're wondering why that number sounds weird, that's because Notre Dame blocked a Florida State point after attempt and ran it back for a 2-point conversion. So it was that kind of game for Florida State. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
Not good. Florida State is a mess. They've got 2 games left here, Mike, both at home. That's the good news. Bad news, they're against Boston College and Florida. You need to win one of those to even have any shred of hope that you might backdoor your way into a bowl at 5-7. I don't know which of those games you feel better about. Maybe it's Boston College coming off of a disappointing Clemson win with a banged-up Anthony Brown, and you've got a bit of a get-back game from last year. But, I mean, either that or against Florida, who has had their moments of good and bad this year, but still a very capable team relative to what we've seen from Florida State. I think we are about to start having legitimate conversations about Florida State's 35-year bowl streak being broken.
Yep. And you mentioned them potentially backing into a bowl at 5-7. We know they're not getting in on APR. Had to slide that one in there.
Shade.
Had to slide that one in there.
Yeah, it's not looking good for the Noles. Not looking good. Looked like, Lee Corso mentioned that on College Game Day. They didn't think they were going to a bowl game. And you could see like it visibly hurt him to say that, but it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, Sunshine Scooter didn't like predicting that one.
No, he did not. Notre Dame 42, Florida State 13. Let's move on. My Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 27, Miami 21.
Cam, sup?
Hey Cam.
Sup?
Hey Cam. Shout out Cam Underwood. Yeah, I thought about tweeting him today. I haven't tweeted him yet, and I'm very, very tempted to, but I think I'm just going to leave that one alone. Georgia Tech played a pretty good game here tonight. I was really impressed. Really, I've given a lot of grief to Taquan Marshall this season, but he played a really good game Saturday night. He had 24 carries for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. More importantly, 3 for 4 passing for 73 yards and a touchdown. He had a couple of really good throws. He hit Brad Stewart on a beautiful route that Stewart ran where he shook a Miami defender out of his shoes. He had a really clutch pass at the end of the game as they were trying to put the game on ice, hit Jalen Camp in some traffic that got a key first down and moved him into Miami territory. And he made a ton of really good reads in the option game. There weren't a whole lot of those head scratching, what is he doing? Just hand the ball off kind of things. There were some, but there were not a ton. And so I was impressed with how he played. Mike, the other guy I was really impressed with in this game, N'Kosi Perry. N'Kosi Perry looked really good. He was really good throwing the ball. He was very elusive, had a few runs where Georgia Tech basically had him dead to rights on a sack, and he just sort of slips out, and next thing you know, he's picking up a first down. That was really frustrating to watch, but he was really good. He was not getting a lot of help from his team. Miami had some problems running the ball in a lot of cases on Georgia Tech, and at least in terms of efficiency. They had a few long runs, but a lot of their stuff, they were struggling to get a whole lot of headway. So I was really impressed with Georgia Tech in this game. I thought it was a good win. They benefited from some turnover luck in certain places, but overall they had a certain game plan and they came in and executed it really well. And this is a really good win for Georgia Tech, and they get bowl eligible. I'm getting the money back on the ticket, Mike. Getting the money back at worst, and if you get a win here against Virginia or Georgia, I'm cashing it, baby. And I thought I was done. I thought it was done.
Yeah, and you know what? Georgia Tech's hitting their stride at the right time of year. They have been very good over the last month or so.
Mm-hmm.
Miami has not been, and that continued. And the weird thing about this is Miami probably played one of their best games in the last month, and they still weren't able to win. Really like their chances in Blacksburg on Saturday, though, Joey. Really like their chances of picking up that W that's eluded them here over the last month or so. They've struggled. It's been no secret. Like you said, N'Kosi Perry was not bad in this game. And Mark Richt is going to be starting N'Kosi Perry against Virginia Tech. And that seems like the right decision. And it seems like a decision they probably should have made all along. Granted, N'Kosi Perry has not been great when he's been in, and I get it. The whole shuffling thing and looking over your shoulder probably hasn't helped him at all or done him any favors. He hasn't played great, but he did look good on Saturday. I think it's the right call to start him against Virginia Tech, try to get him a little bit of confidence. But, man, the Hurricanes are a mess, Joey. They really are. And defensively, this is a unit that's certainly taken a step back from a year ago. Makes me wonder if Manny Diaz is in this weird spot now, kind of like Larry Fedora, where it's been like, well, did you miss your opportunity to become a head coach? Like, did you miss that chance? Because you love Miami so much, but you want to be a head coach at some point, and that window of opportunity closes very quickly in college football. And I think we're really seeing that with Manny Diaz, especially considered the struggles that Miami's had, throughout a lot of this year on defense. The quarterback's gotten all the headlines for Miami, but their defense has certainly taken a step back as well.
Yeah, they really have. There was some really questionable coaching stuff in this game too, Mike. One of the things that happened about what was it? About 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Miami has 4th and 4 in plus territory. They're at Georgia Tech's 47-yard line. They elected to punt the ball, and that's relevant because it ended up in this game that Miami only had the ball 3 times in the second half. That was the second one. They were down 27-14. You got 4th and relatively short in plus territory. I didn't really understand Mark Richt not going for it because after that, Georgia Tech goes 8 plays, 44 yards punt that takes 5 minutes and 17 seconds off the clock. Miami then has to go 15 plays, 95 yards for a touchdown, but 4:33 taken off the clock. Georgia Tech gets the ball back less than 7 minutes left and bleeds the clock out and the game's over. Why did Miami punt that ball from plus territory? I don't really know. The way the game was going, it wasn't like they were going to have a lot of luck getting the ball back. And so, yeah, just some weird decisions. There was some, nonsense drama about the players going up to the student section before the game. Miami players taunting the Georgia Tech student section. Cute.
And then they lost.
Which is typical. Yeah, really impressive effort here for Georgia Tech. Always good to see them get the win. I believe that's Mark Richt's first ever loss at Bobby Dodd Stadium, which pains me more than you know, Mike. But, yeah. Really good effort from Georgia Tech. Really good from Taquan Marshall. I was glad to see that. If he isn't really the go-to guy for the rest of the year, it's really nice to have at least that kind of send-off for him. So very cool. Georgia Tech 27, Miami 21.
You don't get to taunt if your team sucks. Just rule of
thumb. Don't tell the U that. Don't tell the U that.
Or Virginia Tech's defense.
Speaking of which, Mike, Pittsburgh 52, Virginia Tech 22. Goodness.
Professional segue.
Yeah. This game, Virginia Tech, like, mostly kept this competitive. The score didn't really look all that competitive for a while, but I didn't feel like the game ever really got away from them. I mean, they scored a touchdown and went for 2 and got it with, maybe 12 minutes left in the third, or excuse me, a few minutes left in the third, that made it a 16-point game, 2-possession game, and that's where things just totally spiraled. Pittsburgh scores touchdowns on their next 3 drives that took a total of 10 plays. Virginia Tech's defense is so beat up and so ineffective, and there's a lot of problems with the Hokies right now.
This stat courtesy of Bill Connolly from SB Nation. Virginia Tech gave up 13.9 yards per play against Pittsburgh on Saturday.
Oof.
That is the most yards per play in a single game against an FBS opponent dating back to 2005.
Oof.
Of any FBS team.
Yeah. Man.
So,
put it this way,
very good.
Pittsburgh had 654 yards of offense on less than 50 offensive plays.
Yeah, and they had 425 yards at the half. And I tweeted, of course, being a heel. I tweeted, Pittsburgh's on pace for 850 yards of offense, lunch pail D, which got a lot of people in the fan base riled up. But don't give up 425 yards and a half, and I won't tweet things like that. I'm a fan too, like, it pisses me off, but I'm to the point now where, look, yeah, they're young, but they've had injuries all up and down the 2 deep. Great. The defense is bad, and this is Bud Foster's worst defense, arguably, in like 25 plus years. He's been the defensive coordinator, damn near 30 years, actually.
I don't know if that's arguable at this point. I think that's just a fact.
Yeah, it may be arguable from a statistical standpoint. I'm not entirely sure. They had a bad defense in 2003 too, and a lot of people are wondering, like, how does this compare? And I was younger then. I was 11, so let's not pretend like I was this ball of fire at 11 years old. But this seems like it was worse, right? Like, it seems worse. Now, I don't know statistically whether or not the season is worse defensively, but if it's not, it's damn close. And this is certainly the worst defense that I remember in Blacksburg. And offensively, they're not very good either. And a lot of people are kind of turning the other way when it comes to the offense because the attention has been on the defense so often this year. But, man, I mean, Ryan Willis has been pretty good at quarterback, but outside of that, like, listen, guys, Tech has not been able to run the football since 2011. Seriously. Like, David Wilson is the last real running back they've had. I mean, Trayvon McMillan had a nice year, 2015-16. Like, he was okay. Eclipsed 1,000 yards, was the first 1,000-yard rusher since David Wilson. But, a lot of Tech fans who are listening will remember that Trayvon McMillan didn't even start out that year as the guy. It really took until mid-October for him to finally become the guy in the Virginia Tech offense. And now you look at Trayvon McMillan, of course, wasn't a fit with Fuente's offense, goes out to the Pac-12, playing for Colorado, doing great things there and becoming one of the best running backs in that conference. And we're sitting here looking at this running game right now. Stephen Peoples, I mean, he runs hard, good for him, but he can't get a lot going. He's a power back in a bad system. Deshaun McCleese has been hurt. Jalen Holston probably hasn't panned out as well as a lot of people had expected when he was recruited to come here. Terrius Wheatley, son of Tyrone Wheatley from Michigan. A lot of people know that name. Terrius Wheatley really only runs the ball on jet sweeps, and they refuse to get him involved in the offense any other way. The passing game play calling is quite interesting. Ryan Willis, if he gets outside of the pocket, has an inability to make throws down the field or adequate decisions, so he has to be kept within the pocket in order for him to make the best decisions possible. So in other words, the offense is a mess. The offensive line hasn't been good all year, and the defense is terrible, and the coaching hasn't been any good. So now you have a team that's really looking like they're going to miss their first bowl game in 2+ decades, because there's nothing I've seen out of this team the last month that makes me think they're going to A, beat Miami this coming Saturday, or B, extend the streak against Virginia that would be going on 15 years if they were to win this game on Black Friday in about a week and a half. So that means Virginia Tech misses a bowl game. What does that mean for the program moving forward? That's what a lot of people have been asking the last couple of days. And all I can say is you look at this thing moving forward, and there are a lot of young guys who are going to have another year under their belt and are going to be another year more experienced. And Virginia Tech has a very soft schedule next season. With that being said, there is nothing that I've seen out of this team, out of this roster, and out of the guys who are coming in the next recruiting class that makes me think that all of a sudden they're going to make a jump from 4, 5, 6 wins to like 10, despite the schedule. I just don't see it. This isn't a team that's going to like push Clemson next year or anything of that sort. Like a lot of people had been saying before the year. It's like, okay, Virginia Tech might have a down year, but watch out for them in 2019, 2020. They could be real good. I don't know about that. I think they'll be better, Joey, but I don't think they're a team that's even close to competing with the cream of the crop in the ACC, who, is really like Clemson, and then who else at this point? We'll figure it out. I mean, Florida State, I guess, is due to bounce back. But look, Virginia Tech, they're in a bad place right now. It's a bad year. It happens. What really interests me is what this program looks like moving forward, and that's going to be something we're going to have to continue to monitor here.
The thing that gets me, Mike, and I won't pile on too much here, but the thing that gets me, and we've kind of talked about, is that this is year 3 under Justin Fuente. This is year 2 under Justin Fuente since, you had a massive exodus of talent after that first year, 2016. They had Gerard Evans and Bucky Hodges, and I don't even remember all the names, but there was a lot of offensive firepower there. Under Justin Fuente, S&P Plus offensive ranking, 2016, it was 51. 2017, it was 96. 2018, now it is 49. So technically, this is the best offense that he's had at Virginia Tech, which I have major questions about that. But more importantly, I guess it's at what point, I guess, you see a guy who ran these great offenses at Memphis and TCU, when does that start to translate here? I would have hoped, I guess, in year 3, even replacing Josh Jackson. I mean, we said Ryan Francis has looked pretty good when he's been in the games. Like, at what point are they able to pick up the slack a little bit when the defense is kind of banged up and young? That's the part that kind of concerns me here, is that this offense has never really found its stride, especially now going on 2 full years. Last year they go 9-4, but that's largely thanks to a really stout defense. I don't know. I'm not on the fire Justin Fuente train, as much as a rival fan base can be, but I do have questions, and I think I've mentioned these before, about how much there is a long-term feasibility to him here at Virginia Tech, despite how much a couple of years ago we talked about how perfect of a fit this was for him with this program.
It's bad.
It's not good. Not good. Mike, before we move on, I think there's something else that we need to talk about here, and I need you to hear me out. Is Pitt good? I mean,
are they? I mean, they might be a little less bad than everybody else.
I'm just annoyed because Pitt all of a sudden, we talked about before how they still struggled to score points. And then in the last 3 games, they've scored 54, 23, and 52. But I watch these games, Mike, and I feel like when they keep scoring all these points, they scored all those points against Duke because Duke's defense was like absolutely appalling at taking routes and tackling. And now Virginia Tech's defense just found themselves badly out of position in a lot of cases. Like, maybe the offensive line is pulling it together for Pittsburgh, and that's where they're kind of generating a lot of this rushing offense off of. But to some degree, I feel like it's luck, and it's just not a sustainable thing. Like, when they go play Miami in 2 weeks, if Miami's charged up to play that game, which I don't see why they wouldn't be, that defense might be able to really give Pitt a lot of problems in the run game. I just don't know if this is a sustainable thing that they're doing.
Pitt is a poor man's Boston College.
I'll give you that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
Right,
good comparison.
right. So all of a sudden, you're really good at running the ball. You know what? They're like Boston College a year ago. That's who Pitt is.
Yeah,
Pitt is like
yeah.
Boston College a year ago, right? So hear me out. So last year you had Anthony Brown for a little bit, then he got hurt, right? And you had AJ Dillon, and he was really good last year, and he was breaking out. Now you have two running backs, Darren Hall and Quadri Allison. Both have been around a little while, both pretty good.
Breakaway
Um,
speed.
Breakaway speed, but break out, break away. They run fast. They're really good at running back, right? And then you have Kenny Pickett at quarterback, who is not very good, but maybe he'll figure it out, right? Um, and maybe that's where Anthony Brown was a year ago, like just starting to figure it out. Now, granted, I think Anthony Brown's better than Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett can be the guy who's kind of figuring it out, like Anthony Brown slash Darius Wade slash whoever else Boston College threw in there last year when all hell broke loose at quarterback. Um, and now you have a defense that's not quite as good as Boston College's defense, but Pitt's defense has improved a little bit as the season's gone on. We talked about how bad the defenses have been for Pat Narduzzi at Pitt. This year, the defense hasn't been great, but it's been improving. And now you're starting to wonder, okay, maybe they're a year away from being Boston College, where they're at 8, 9, trying to get to 10 wins at the very best, right? That's for a year from now, because we're not going to have any more clarity on the Coastal a year from now than we do right this second. We're not. And Pitt could be one of those teams next year that, Quadri Allison, I believe he's a senior, so he'll be gone. But Darren Hall will still be there. I think he's a year younger. And Kenny Pickett will certainly be there. He's a junior. And they still got a lot of young talent on defense that will be taking the next step. So keep an eye on Pitt, Joey. That's all I'm going to say. Keep an eye on Pitt. I don't know how good they are this year, but they're starting to figure it out at the right time.
They definitely are. By the way, Darren Hall and Quadri Allison, both seniors. So, oops.
Womp. Whoops.
They're not back next year, so that's not good.
Okay, well, take that back. That's not great.
I actually really like your Boston College 2017 comparison, because that's what they were, right? Boston College was kind of a one-trick pony. They're going to turn it around. As soon as they figured out they could turn around and hand it off to A.J. Dillon 35 times a game, and that more often than not was going to result in 40 points. I mean, that's what they did. And that drives me nuts, because that's just so uncreative and boring. But if it works, just keep doing it, I guess. But I guess the thing that I kind of come back to is, as much as the results are changing and they're somehow 5-1 in conference and all this stuff, I come back and their S&P Plus rank is 62. Like, they're still barely in the top half of the country, right? And so that kind of, I think, to some degree validates that I don't know how good they really legitimately are. They're also, I think they only won, one out of conference game, and that was against Albany. It was an FCS team.
Yep.
They got drubbed by Penn State. They got drubbed by Central Florida, and they couldn't quite knock off Notre Dame when Notre Dame had a bit of a clunker. I don't know. Pitt's 5-1 in conference, and they're going to win the Coastal and go to Charlotte, just as we all said that they would. But, I mean, I still don't know how good that makes them necessarily. But maybe I'm just a hater. I don't know, Mike.
They're going to get smoked by Clemson, but I don't know if that's a referendum on Pitt as much as it is a referendum really on the Coastal Division and how much better Clemson is than everybody in the Coastal and really everybody in the Atlantic as well.
Fun thought experiment would be if you put together a like an all-star team from all of the other 13 ACC teams, could they beat Clemson? Answer, I think, is probably, but I think Clemson has pretty clearly got a massive lead on the field. So, yeah, it's more a reference on Clemson and what they're doing relative to the rest of the conference, I think.
Yep, I would agree.
All right, Pittsburgh 52, Virginia Tech 22. Let's move on. Duke 42, North Carolina 35. Mike, this game was a shootout until it kind of stopped. This game was 28-28 in the middle of the second quarter. These teams going up and down the field, and it was 35-28 at halftime and the whole thing. And then there were a combined 14 points scored in the second half, because I guess we just can never have a normal North Carolina Duke game.
Right. Hope you had the over, though.
77 points. More than were budgeted.
Yes, much more. Many more? A lot more. Whatever. More points than we're budgeted.
Several more. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about this game a little bit. Nathan Elliott didn't play too bad for North Carolina. Daniel Jones, he ran all over him. I don't know what North Carolina was doing.
This was classic Daniel Jones right here.
This is like Daniel Jones from his freshman year. We were like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. This was like running all over everybody, relatively efficient throwing the football, like classic Daniel Jones.
Yeah, Daniel Jones, 31 of 54 for 361, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Also 15 carries for 186 and 1 touchdown.
Perfect.
Man, that's a game.
That's almost 600 yards, right? By himself? Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad. I had North Carolina plus 8.5. Let's do a little story here, Joey. Duke had the ball with a little over a minute to play, and they had it about 4th and 7 at like the 35-yard line, up by 7, up by the winning margin. It was 42-35, right? Duke could have kicked a field goal. It would have been a long field goal, but they could have kicked a field goal, which, of course, if they made it, a 2-possession
game.
They would have covered. They decided to instead go for it, pick up the first down, and run out the clock. Something that I was all for, right? On 4th and 7, 8, 9, whatever it was. Daniel Jones proceeded to throw an interception, and then North Carolina, it was a touchback after the interception, so I'm cheering in my house. And then North Carolina then proceeds to try to win the game. They threw a Hail Mary at the very end. Duke knocked it down as time expired. And North Carolina covered. So shout out to the Tar Heels. But that was almost like the worst of beats.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, you benefited though, so that's good.
I did. It was good.
Man, this first half drive chart is a whole thing.
Oh boy.
Starting UNC gets the ball to start the game, and from there we go touchdown, 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 punt, miss field goal, touchdown, 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 miss field goal, punt, touchdown, end of half. That's a lot of possessions.
Just the first half.
And then the same game, those same 2 teams in the second half, miss field goal, punt, fumble, punt, touchdown, punt, turnover on downs, punt, touchdown, interception, end of game.
Yep.
Those 2 teams, that was the game those 2 teams played.
It was like 2 completely different games.
I mean, what is that, 9 touchdowns in the first half and then a bunch of punts and turnovers in the second half? Man, that's bizarre. This is a weird game. So Duke finds himself at 7-3. They're 3-3 in conference, and North Carolina now 1-8. Fair to say, though, that they also have not quit, which is very impressive. I don't know how that happens. They're going to win against Western Carolina next week, and then they've got a game against North Carolina State Thanksgiving weekend, which should be very interesting to watch as well. So,
I was watching the ACC Panic Room that Lauren Brownlow does with shout out Lauren with Joe Ovies, right, from WRAL and the whole bit in North Carolina, and they were talking about, okay, well, Larry Fedora, like, they don't want to pay that buyout, like they really don't, and the players are playing hard for Fedora, so like there's a better chance than not that Fedora keeps his job, which is something that maybe we hadn't talked about really at all. We talked about the buyout. We said, okay, well, North Carolina probably doesn't want to pay that, but they will if it gets bad enough. But this is like different from a year ago, right? Like where North Carolina was really ravaged by injuries and they kind of just throw it out. And then you had the beginning of this year where Larry Fedora talked about CTE as like, essentially the fall of man or something at the ACC kickoff. And then you have this weird year where like North Carolina only has 1 win, but they're playing really hard for Fedora and they're still pretty young. And they got a really young quarterback in Cade Fortin who's going to be pretty good. That's sitting behind Nathan Elliott right now, who's seen some action, played a lot against Virginia Tech, actually. Pretty good player that has developed nicely behind Nathan Elliott. And you wonder if they give Fedora like 1 more year here. I'm real curious. So all that being said, Lauren and Joe were like, okay, well, they'll give Fedora 1 more year probably, unless he loses to Western Carolina.
At which point, yeah. I mean, but would you put it past him? They found a way to lose to everybody else, including Eastern Carolina, and I mean, it could
Yeah,
happen.
it could. Now, ironically, they beat Pitt,
Yeah,
which, I mean, that looks like a good win now because Pitt's going to win the Coastal, it looks like, until they don't. And that seems like a really good win. Too bad it's their only win.
yeah, that's a shame. It's a shame, Mike. All right, Duke 42, North Carolina 35. Last one, the hashtag 25 Virginia Cavaliers 45, Liberty 24. This game was not the runaway blowout that we wanted it to be for a supposedly legitimately good Virginia team. Liberty scores on their opening drive, takes a 7-0 lead. Virginia comes back and does some scoring of their own, but then so does Liberty. Virginia kicks a field goal going into halftime to go up 24-17. So they had a halftime lead of 7 points in a game where they're favored by 23.5. They run back the opening kickoff for the second half for a touchdown to go up 31-17 and then immediately give up another touchdown. And Liberty, midway through the third quarter, is only down 31-24. Like, that's not the kind of dominance or feel-good win you had for Virginia here. They did not just comfortably, without a question, leave no doubt, taking care of business in this game. They win by 3 touchdowns. I'm mostly mad that they didn't cover, but I mean, at the end of the day, I guess maybe Virginia just trying not to show a whole lot here or something, but in a bit of a comfortable win, you probably would have liked to see a little bit more from the Cavs.
Yeah, I agree. Liberty's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. They're 4-5 now.
Yeah. Despite the record, they're pretty bad. Congratulations on being an FBS school. Congratulations on the 4 wins, but they are pretty bad. And they found a way to hang around, but it just felt like this entire game, UVA just continued to shoot themselves in the foot, and Liberty just found a way to just kind of hang around. And it was weird because even when it was a 7-point game on multiple occasions, like, I just kept checking on this game, and I'm like, because I'm not stupid enough to watch this game in its entirety. Come on now. But, you watch this game, and you keep checking on it, and it's like, well, Liberty's down by 7, but do they really have the horses? No, they don't. Plot twist. Yeah, Virginia is not good enough to be dominant against really bad teams, but they're good enough to beat them handily enough where you don't really question it if you're just looking at the box score. And I think that's kind of where we're at with Virginia right now, which is, hey, to their credit, like, better than you could say about most of the Coastal.
Yeah. I don't know that we can make a whole lot of excuses for anybody in the Coastal at this point.
Right.
Not a whole lot of particularly good teams, but I mean, at the very least, yeah, Virginia's winning, and that's more than a lot of these teams can say. So good on them. They're 7-3 now. They're 7-3. They're 4-2 in conference, and games left on the road at Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. So this was senior day for Virginia. In most years, that would be a really daunting stretch. This year, perhaps a little bit less so.
File their 7-3 record and 4-2 record in the conference through 11 weeks as didn't see that coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Sign me up for that.
Yep.
It is funny though. Again, we keep playing this game every week, Mike, and best win on the schedule I think is pretty obvious. Second best win is much less so. Maybe it is obvious. Virginia's wins this year: Richmond, Ohio, Louisville, Miami, at Duke, North Carolina, Liberty. So put it this way: they've only won once on the road this year. Best win pretty clearly against Miami, for what that's worth. Second best win probably against Duke on the road.
Is their best win against Miami though? Like, is it? It might be at Duke.
Maybe.
Now, talent-wise, their best win is against Miami.
Oh, 100%.
100%. And that's not even a comparison. But, like, team-wise right now, at Duke.
Yeah.
And Duke beat Miami.
So. Yeah,
somehow.
That's true.
And I don't know. But talent-wise, like, I agree. I mean, Miami's got all the talent in the world and just can't put it together.
That was kind of a nasty, like, Friday night game, too.
It was, and something that is kind of related because we're talking about like good wins that we didn't bring up when talking about Syracuse earlier is like Syracuse's best win we had talked about it last week, probably against NC State. And then NC State went ahead and lost to then 4-5 Wake Forest. And that is still probably Syracuse's best win, and they find themselves in the top 15 in the college football playoff. So Notre Dame enters the game. We'll get into this in the preview. Notre Dame opens up as a 9-point favorite in that game this Saturday. I wonder how competitive Syracuse actually can be. Like, really good offense and all that, but makes you wonder. I don't know. But there are a lot of teams who, like, they're empty calorie victories this year, it feels like. It's like, okay, a lot of teams have like 6 or 7 wins in the ACC, but like, how good are those records actually?
That's a point that we're making about the ACC, but I feel like you could also make about most of the country.
Yeah.
Like we brought up the concept a couple weeks ago, I believe, of like, how far down the top 25 do you have to go to get to a team that you're like, I'm not really sure how good they actually are. Go to like a number 11 Kentucky or something like that. And you sit here, you can start picking holes in the resumes of any team in the, in the top of the playoff ranking, because who's their best win? Oh, I don't know. Reason is there's only like 6 good teams. Like, no, even top 25 teams are not that good, comparatively to those top 6 or 8 teams, And so at that point, nobody's got good wins and everybody's got a questionable resume, and we all start having identity crises, and it's just a really great time to be alive.
Well, and then you follow, if you follow, Bill Connolly, and we talk about podcasting, Play Nobody, like, they would argue that 3 of the top 15 teams in the country are from the group of 5. Like Fresno State and because I don't know what the updated rankings are. Fresno State, UCF, and Utah State are all pretty good this year, and they would argue that those are 3 of the top 15 teams in the country according to S&P Plus. So that's kind of where we're at this year. Like you said, like, there are only really like 6 or 7 really good teams, and then it's everybody else.
Fresno State's number 9 in S&P Plus right now.
After losing to Boise.
Yeah, and that speaks to how dominant they've been over most everybody else they've played. UCF finds themselves at number 7 in S&P Plus. Like, these are some legitimately good teams. They're as consistent and dominant as any, and yet they're not really getting a whole lot of respect or a whole lot of looks. And call it what you will, but again, it's kind of a year where there's a lot of very flawed teams. I think you're talking about very realistic scenarios where you have a couple of undefeated teams, and you don't really have any legitimate 1-loss teams. You just got a bunch of 2-loss teams you got to try to sort out from the Power 5. So I don't know. Weird year for the ACC, but really just a weird year for the entire country. Strange year for college football in general.
Yep.
Mike, we got a couple of awards we got to hand out, and then I got an email we want to get to here before we get out of here. The Brian Van Gordon Memorial You Tried Award this week goes to our beloved Boston College Eagles. Their offense really made a lot of effort at moving the ball on the Clemson defense, and God love them. They did surpass the 100-yard mark of total yardage, including garbage time and all of it. So good on you, Boston College. You tried, and you, as well as other teams before you, have failed, and that's okay. Failure is okay.
They tried like hell. They really did. A.J. Dillon tried like hell. Couldn't quite get to 40 yards, but he really tried.
Yeah, 16 carries. He tried 16 times to get to 40 yards. Could not quite get there. So go ACC to that. Brian Van Gordon Memorial You Tried Award goes to Boston College's offense this week. Dumpster Fire of the Week, Mike. Staying close to home in Blacksburg.
Oh, God. Yeah, the Dumpster Fire of the Week goes to Virginia Tech defense. More specifically, the running defense, which gave up nearly 500 yards on the ground. Not ideal. Let's put it that way. Not ideal. And hasn't really been good the last few weeks, actually. Wasn't great against Boston College either. Was a little bit better, but still not great.
Same as Georgia Tech. Not good in that game either. I texted you a screen grab I got of the long touchdown run, one of them by, I can't remember if it was Allison or Hall, but it was one of these where basically Virginia Tech's entire defense was not even in the box as much as just like on the line of scrimmage. There wasn't even a second level for anybody to go block. Like, Darren Hall got through the first level and then was just gone, and that was it. And there's stuff like that that's like, that's being out of place and coaching and all that. That's where it goes from, maybe you just got beat to, you're kind of beating yourself on that one.
Yeah, it's just, It's rough, and there have been a lot of occasions like that this year where you can line up basically anybody you want in there, and it's just you're not going to make the tackles, and it's painful.
Yeah, not great. Go ACC moment of the week, Mike. This is going to go to Georgia Tech. They had a kick. I think it was early in the third quarter in this game, a punt. They were trying to back Miami up into their own side of the field. Presley Harvin has a beautiful kick that's going to go inside the Miami 20-yard line. Jeff Thomas back there to receive it and kind of overruns it and has to double back to try to catch it over his head. He doesn't catch it over his head. And in the scramble to pick up this muffed punt, none other than Georgia Tech's returner, Wanye Thomas, comes up and just gives him the most disrespectful, dismissive shove. And it is absolutely hysterical to watch. Just go watch the recap of this game, the highlights on YouTube. It is one of the most funny and probably unintentionally just hilarious and disrespectful things I've ever seen.
Heisman stiff arm, baby. Heisman stiff arm.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was fantastic. So go ACC to Wanye Thomas for just dismissing the hell out of Jeff Thomas en route to picking up a muffed punt. That was glorious.
Go dismiss that 4-star recruit.
Absolutely. Please do. Last thing, Mike. We got an email from Mr. Keith Derrick, who's becoming a constant emailer. He is trying to threaten for Andrew Parker's title of #1 listener of the Basketball Conference podcast. So, Andrew, you've been served notice here. You are officially on watch. Keith writes in, "Hey, Joey and Mike, now that we have teams getting to 6 or more wins, can we get some bowl predictions from you? Especially Georgia Tech, where will they end up after watching Miami last night? Will they make 6 wins? They being Miami. The podcast is best when you guys are wrong with your predictions. This should help out." That's high praise, Mike. We were wrong often.
A lot. We're wrong a lot. We call ourselves experts, tongue in cheek, and that's why. Where is Georgia Tech going bowling? Let's make a guess. You want to make a guess? We said we wouldn't do this, but let's make a guess. Just do it.
Fine. Let me pull up the bowl tie-ins again. I was looking at this earlier today, and it reminds me your annual reminder, Mike, that the ACC's bowl tie-ins a steaming pile of garbage.
Yeah, I agree. I think Georgia Tech's going to the Military Bowl.
Military Bowl. Okay, I've heard that one. Gosh, they're going to end up in like the Independence Bowl or something stupid.
Couldn't they be good enough down the stretch to make it to the Belk Bowl?
So that's the thing, is that if they beat Virginia on Saturday, Georgia Tech will be 5-3 in conference, and then they'll lose to Georgia and be 7-5 overall. Which I don't really know how we rank these things, but I think being 5-3 in conference might put them up in that tier 1 bowl range, maybe. Let's see, Clemson going to the playoff. And then after that, I don't know that anybody else is going to New Year's Six.
No.
So we got to send somebody to the Camping World Bowl. So call that Boston College or Syracuse.
I guess if Syracuse were to upset Notre Dame and then win their season finale against Boston College, I guess they would, in theory, be in play for a New Year's Six with 2 losses, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe. I don't know. Again, to be fair, if you beat Notre Dame and Boston College, I feel a lot better about your 2-loss record than I do right now.
Strength of record, pretty good at that point.
Yeah, not bad. So we'll put, but I'm not going to say they're going to do that. They're going to lose to Notre Dame, I think. Maybe,
and I think they might lose to Boston College too. If we want to project out a little bit, I like BC's team a lot. But anyway.
Okay, so Syracuse or Boston College in the Camping World Bowl, and then these tier 1 bowls, you got the Belk Bowl, the Music City, or the Tax Slayer Bowl, otherwise known as the Gator Bowl, the Pinstripe Bowl, and the Sun Bowl. So you need 4 teams there. So that's the other of Syracuse and Boston College. I don't know if that's Duke, if they qualify there, or who.
Ooh. Duke's got the Pinstripe Bowl written all over them.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
Yeah, they do. By the way, did you see Notre Dame's helmets that they're going to wear against Syracuse?
No. Oh, God.
Oh, my gosh. I want to call the cops.
Okay. Well,
it's not okay.
Good. I'll grab a bucket.
What the hell? Gosh. Okay. So currently bowl eligible teams: Clemson, Syracuse, Boston College, NC State, Pittsburgh, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Duke. And I'm going to say Miami gets there.
Wow.
And I guess I'm going to say that Wake gets there. Okay, so we'll end up with 10 bowl eligible teams, which seems
Oh
right.
my god. 10 bowl eligible teams for arguably the worst conference in the Power 5 this year.
I'm starting to question what the mathematical minimum is because I feel like we're starting to experience that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like NC State probably gets to what, the Sun Bowl. We'll say Duke currently at 7-3. They'll get like the Pinstripe Bowl. So yeah, Georgia Tech probably gets relegated down here to the additional bowls.
Sup, Military Bowl.
Selection order, yeah, Military Bowl is the first selection. They're probably going there. Yeah. They probably won't end up with walk-ons, the Independence Bowl in Shreveport. So
Virginia Tech ended up there against Tulsa. It was a shootout.
Oof. Yeah, Georgia Tech lost to Air Force there in 2010. Ugh. If that tells you anything about where that program was at that point. Josh Nesbitt had broken his arm at Virginia Tech, and the whole thing went downhill real fast. So, look, Georgia Tech beats Virginia. You maybe find your way into one of these Tier 1 bowls. That's the Belk Bowl, the Music City or Gator Bowl, the Pinstripe Bowl, and the Sun Bowl. But I think other than that, you're probably banking on the Military Bowl in Annapolis, which isn't – I mean, that's not the worst thing. Washington, D.C., kind of nice. It's cold and windy and all that, but
watch what you say. Watch you shut your whore mouth. By the way, I've actually been to a Military Bowl several times. We have family friends that one of them's on the board for the Military Bowl, so we've been there a good bit. They have it at Navy Stadium, which is a lot of fun because you end up playing Navy a lot. Probably not this year because they're atrocious. But you end up playing against Navy a lot. It ends up being like a freaking road game at a bowl game, which is a sight.
Yeah.
And it's like, it holds like 40,000, but it gets pretty loud there. So, hey, what the hell, man? You get like Georgia Tech playing a military school in the bowl game. Shout out Air Force.
You think Paul Johnson knows his way around that stadium?
He may. He may. Only because he coached there for like, I don't know, 15 years. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think he'd be okay there.
Yeah. Mike, we said we were just going to guess the number of bowl eligible teams. I think I'm going to stick with 10 here. I think Miami gets there. I think they're going to get there, Mike. I have to. Right?
Right. I guess. I'll say that there are 8 bowl eligible teams, and that might be on the low end, but I'll go with 8. Say it again.
Well, I was going to say, you don't feel a damn bit of good about them playing your Hokies next week in Blacksburg. And if Virginia Tech does win that game, we might be talking about a doomsday scenario where they're both, Miami's 5-6 and needs a win, and they got, Boston College coming in? Or Pittsburgh, excuse me.
They have Pitt coming in, and, Pitt's obviously already bowl eligible. Miami will be playing for well, you know what? So Miami conference record-wise is where right now?
They're 2-4.
Okay, so they're done. The Coastal Division really is Pitt, and then opening the door for Georgia Tech potentially.
I believe Georgia Tech is out of it at this point. If Virginia Tech had beaten Pittsburgh and made them 4-2, Georgia Tech definitely had a foreseeable path there. But at 4-3, basically, if Pitt loses out and has 3 losses, they've got the tiebreaker over Georgia Tech.
So has Pitt officially clinched?
No, because Virginia has 2 losses.
So that's right. Good old Virginia. I forgot about Virginia.
Yeah, so if Virginia wins out and Pitt loses out, Virginia will win the Coastal.
Oh my God!
Mm-hmm.
Oh no!
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! The Virginia Cavaliers.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, Virginia's that team that everybody's forgetting about. Is even me myself, with an ACC football podcast, forgetting that they only have 2 losses in conference play right now. That is a scary thought, Joey. So wow. You think Pitt will get rolled by Clemson? As you like to say, Joey, shoo buddy.
Shoo buddy.
Shoo buddy.
Ooh-la.
Yep.
By the way, Pitt remaining games at Wake, at Miami. Tell me they can't lose both of those games.
They absolutely can. If you're a Virginia fan, and congratulations in this scenario. Congratulations on breaking the 14-game losing streak against Virginia Tech. Cover your eyes next week, right?
Mm-hmm.
conference championship week. Congratulations, you're going to the ACC. Oh no.
Oops.
Oh no. Oh boy.
Ooh, God.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe Virginia goes to a New Year's Six.
Oh God.
Just kidding. They're going to get smoked by Clemson.
Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, that would be something. Can you imagine Virginia upsetting Clemson? That would be peak ACC. Virginia upsets Clemson, and now Virginia is in a New Year's Six.
Yeah, that would be. Gosh, no, thank you.
Ugh.
Mike, that's all I got. We need to get out of here. This has gone on for way too long.
Good recap.
It was a good recap. Yeah, week 11. There was a lot of shuffling going on here and some unexpected results, but yeah, good recap. Once again, Mike, your picks were really good this week. You're on a heater here.
I'm on a heater. I didn't even really bet a lot of the ACC games this weekend, so
yeah.
But hey, I'm on a heater.
Your picks though, 5-2-1 against the spread. I was 3-4-1 against the spread. Shout out Clemson on the push. I finished. I'm on the year now. I am 38-39-2. You are 40-37-2. So. Good on you. Good on you for that. Yeah, good recap here. We got week 12 coming up. We are coming down the home stretch here. We just got a couple more weeks as we try to sort out again. Is Pittsburgh or Virginia going to represent the Coastal as getting just steamrolled by Clemson in Charlotte? But should be fun to come back and preview those games. In the meantime, Mike, they can find us on Twitter. I'm at FTRS Joey. He's at Mike McDaniel, CFB, and together we're at BC Podcast ACC. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, the Overcast app, wherever fine podcasts are sold for free. Mike, they can send us an email with their questions, comments, concerns to the longest email address known to man, basketballconferencepodcast@gmail.com.
Nailed it.
And thank you to Mr. Keith Derrick for hitting us with an email. That was much appreciated, and that turned into a fun little segment. So if y'all have other stuff that comes up, other random thoughts that you have or anything, just let us know. We would love to hear what you guys want us to talk about on the program. Mike, tell them where they can find us on the social medias.
Facebook.com/basketball conference. Rate, review, find all of our podcasts there. Also, rate and review us on iTunes, Google Play. Make sure you keep doing that.
Yeah, and the DMs are open on Facebook too, by the way. So if you got questions, hit us up there. That's just fine. That works. Mike, anything else before we get out of here? You want to come back and preview Week 12?
Yep, got to.
We do. We are. We're committed at this point. So
yeah, we didn't come this far only to come this far.
That is true. That's 100% accurate.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're going to come back and preview those games, and we will talk to you then. But until next time, for Mr. Mike McDaniel, I'm Joey Weaver. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. And until next time, go ACC.